everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com. Gang, Friday. Gotta get down on Friday, and you know why? Because it's my favourite time of the week. And why is that? Because it's time to look at my wrestlers of the week. A far more action-packed week this week than last week, which wasn't short on quality, it was just short on wrestling. There was just less of the wrestling. But this week there's more of the wrestling, and lots of it was good. But who was the best and in what order? Let's find out, and let's take a look at all 10 of my wrestlers of the week. As always, please keep that in. As always, we begin with some of my honourable mentions. Hiroshi Tanahashi lost the Rev Pro British Heavyweight Championship, but had a really good match in doing so. But it was a big loss for him, especially so soon after winning that title. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch had arguably the best, certainly the most intense match of Clash of Champions. Strowman and Rollins had arguably the other candidate for the best match of the night. And even though Rollins won and most of the crowd wanted Strowman to win, it was still a decent match in that kind of rapid fire, rapid finishers, Brock Lesnar sort of model. We're also going to talk about Xavier Woods, who had a really good babyface performance in defeat to the Revival. Will Ospreay and Robbie Eagles, really good tag match, really good at one of the New Japan Destruction shows, but they didn't win the belt, and I thought it kind of robbed them of a lot of momentum, given the fact that they're a new tag team in and around the scene. Marty Scurll and Bandito continued their little mini feud on Ring of Honor, and it's probably the best thing going on Ring of Honor at the minute. Another good match between those two guys. And Cassius Ohno and Savvy Sid Scala had a British Rounds match, a World of Sport match basically, on NXT UK, and it was different and fun. Like the song Friday itself in a way. Now on to number 10. This week's number 10 is one of the women who opened the show, opened the first NXT on the USA Network. A big match, a huge platform, a lot of pressure, but I have to take my hat off to Candice LeRae. Candice took on Bianca Belair, Mia Yim and Io Shirai in a really good, really fast-paced four-way match to determine the new #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship. And after a lot of back and forth between all four women and a really hot crowd, it was Candice who was able to get the win, pinning, I think it was Mia Yim, with a lovely reverse Rana, or poison Rana, I guess, off the top. Not off the top, but like there was a bit of a corner spot, and then she did it backwards. Not off the top. The start of the spot was on the top, now they moved backwards off the top, and then she did the move in the I know about wrestling. Candice's performance was really good, but obviously because it was a four-way match, the workload was split between all four women, and all four women did really well. But because she had a massive win, and because it was a really good opening to the show, and because of her intense stare down with Shayna Baszler afterwards as well, I'm going to have to give Candice LeRae a point on Wrestlers of the Week, and I'm really excited to see what their match is going to be like, actually. Because if you remember, Shayna Baszler, I think, eliminated Candice from one of the Mae Young Classics in kind of shockingly abrupt fashion. So I'm rooting for Candice to get her revenge and become the new NXT Women's Champion. I hope so anyway. I think she deserves it. Number 9, let's go over to New Japan this week. I did mention Robbie Eagles and Will Ospreay. What's their tag team like? The Birds of War or something? Birds of War! They're a new tag team, obviously, but they didn't win the junior heavyweight tag team titles, which I thought was a strange booking decision, to be quite honest with you. They've got matching gear and everything, lads. They've made an effort. But their opponents this week made for a really good matchup and a really good match. And one of those was this week's number 9, Taiji Ishimori. Ishimori's a weird one because he, I think pound for pound, is probably one of the best wrestlers on the New Japan roster. Certainly one of the best junior heavyweights. He's lightning fast. He had an excellent Best of the Super Juniors final last year against Hiromu Takahashi. Can't wait to see him back as well. But Ishimori is like such a good wrestler that I'm shocked that he hasn't been utilised a bit more. I think he's had one or two little junior heavyweight title reigns under his belt, but now he's in the tag division alongside El Phantasmo, and he's kind of playing second fiddle to ELP, in my opinion. But he reminded us all of his quality with a wonderful match this week. He's got probably the best sliding German suplex in all of wrestling. You know, that new move that all the cool kids do when their opponent's on the ropes like that, and they slide underneath them, hit a German, and land outside the ring. It's a really cool move, and I think Ishimori probably does it better than anybody in the business today. He's so rapid, so direct in his action, in his offense, and I just really enjoy watching him wrestle. And I am a little bit disappointed that he is at the minute being confined to the tag team division, but hopefully that all changes in the near future. There's plenty of time for them to bring him back up to like the top of the junior heavyweight division. He is still one half of the junior heavyweight tag team champions as well, and I'm excited to see what he does next. 2 points for you, Taiji. You're number 9 this week. Number 8, I did mention how Taiji Ishimori was playing second fiddle to his tag partner, and I've kind of proven it and reinforced that on this week's Wrestlers of the Week, because number 8 this week is none other than last week's Wrestler of the Week, El Phantasmo. Now in this tag match, because ELP is currently in the midst of this feud with Ospreay, and I think he's going to end up actually taking Ospreay's junior heavyweight title away from him. But But in the meantime, I thought that the heels were going to lose their tag titles to the Birds of War. And then, you know, ELP would get his revenge by beating Ospreay for his singles gold. But instead, they retained the tag titles, which was very strange in my opinion. It was still a wonderful match. It was still really good. ELP was very impressive, as always, in these high-flying sort of matches. I just thought that Ishimori was being set up to be the fall guy, and then Phantasmo would retain some momentum going forwards. But instead, the heels just totally won. It wasn't clean. Ishimori got involved with a belt shot, but ELP was hitting some big moves all throughout the match and really demonstrated his versatility as well. He's great off the top rope. He did an insane moonsault to the outside over the guardrail onto Ospreay at one point, but he's also big and tall enough to do some, you know, excellent power moves on the smaller guys as well. So really good performance from ELP. 3 more points for him on Wrestlers of the Week. He's had a very impressive few weeks in the wrestling sphere, I nearly said, in the wrestling sphere. Number 7, it's a big old debutant on Wrestlers of the Week. We have never seen this man. I don't even think we saw him last year either. So put your hands together for cross-platform MMA and pro wrestling star Filthy Tom Lawler. Now, Filthy Tom, he had a match against Davey Boy Smith Jr. at the Josh Barnett's Bloodsport event, which is always a bit of a highlight. I really enjoy these kind of shoot-style wrestling tournaments, or events, I guess. Not necessarily if they happened all the time, but they're so, you know, they're so sparse that each and every one feels pretty unique. There was a great one over WrestleMania weekend, and there's some really good ones that WXW put on, I think, annually as well. The Ambition tournaments, and they're both pretty much in a similar vein. Shoot-style contests, no pinfalls, submissions and knockouts only, and it makes for a really nice spectacle, depending, I guess, on who's in the ring. One of the best performers of this event was Filthy Tom Lawler. Filthy Tom, who had a really good match, as I say, against Davey Boy Jr. As the smaller man, but the more experienced man in terms of MMA, he is a former UFC fighter after all. Filthy Tom was kind of using himself as a bit of a weapon. Like, he would mix up the strikes and stuff and occasionally just launch himself at Davey Boy Smith. It was a really good match, and even though Filthy Tom wasn't able to pick up the victory, getting knocked out with a huge slam from Davey Boy, it was exactly what these events should be. A nice blend of shoot-style strikes and submission attempts and grappling, mixed with the more showy aspects of pro wrestling, the slower pace, the big slams, you know, the bumping and everything. It was a really good blend, and I think these two guys absolutely nailed it. Number 6 this week, Filthy Tom's opponent, his less filthy opponent, Clean Davey Boy Smith Jr., who really has proven what he can do as a singles wrestler after himself and Luke Archer was split up. When it seemed, I guess, I don't really know the ins and outs, but it seemed as though New Japan weren't really interested in Davey Boy anymore. And since then, both members of the Killer Elite Squad have gone on to have really impressive singles showings. Davey Boy Smith has impressed in these shoot-style kind of things, really showing what he can do in a more legit setting, whereas Luke Archer has really proven what he can do in terms of, I guess, being an excellent pro wrestler that we didn't quite know that he could operate on that level. He had a really cool showing at the G1 Climax in several matches against a variety of opponents. So well done to the Killer Elite Squad for showing what they can do apart as well as together. And yeah, it was just really cool to see. Davey Boy also, I mean, I've given him the edge with a slightly bigger points haul this week just because he got the huge win over Filthy Tom Lawler with a big slam. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in this sort of action again. And I believe he carried an injury into this match as well, so what can you say? Well done, Davey Boy. Excellent performance. And I think this might be his first appearance on the list as well. Next up, number 5. He didn't quite make it. He didn't quite capture the win, but he captured our hearts in doing so. That's right. My number 5 this week is the King of the Ring runner-up, Chad Gable. Shorty G, as he's thankfully not called. Gable was absolutely great, not just in this final on Raw, but in the whole tournament. I mean, he's always, or pretty much always, going to be the smaller man in the match, and he just wrestles so well. He's like a miniature Kurt Angle mixed with Daniel Bryan a little bit. He's got incredible amateur wrestling ability, and he's managed to transfer that into incredible pro wrestling ability. And alongside the likes of Cesaro, you know, he is one of the more underutilized guys in the entire WWE locker room. Who's another one I can think? Sami Zayn as well. Shinsuke Nakamura should be having bigger showcase matches, but Chad Gable, though, hasn't quite got the name value of everyone I've just mentioned, but he deserves it just as much. He is that good in the ring. I cannot believe that Gable, no, I can believe that he didn't win the match, but I cannot believe that he didn't win when he clamped on the Grapevine ankle lock. The Grapevine ankle lock is one of the most inescapable submission holds in the history of pro wrestling. I grew up watching the Attitude Era, and I knew that when Kurt Angle dropped down and locked his other leg over the top of the other dude's leg, I thought, well, it's over then, isn't it? There's no way they can escape from this ankle lock. And then it got even more like that as the years progressed into the Ruthless Aggression Era, and Angle was like the wrestling machine. When Kurt Angle grapevines that leg, there's no escape. Chad Gable dropped down, grapevined the leg, and Baron Corbin made the ropes and then beat Chad Gable. It was a great match. The crowd really got into it down the stretch. I couldn't believe he escaped. But then again, Chad Gable did regain some momentum on SmackDown this week. In fact, both of the main roster shows, or now NXT's on there, I guess all 3 of the main roster shows, delivered this week. SmackDown was probably the weakest of the 3, but it was still an enjoyable show, and one of the more enjoyable moments was Gable trashing Baron Corbin's coronation ceremony, and hopefully he does get a win in the future to kind of bounce him back up, because he built a lot of steam over this King of the Ring tournament, and it would be a shame to see that go to waste. Number 4 this week, DREAM, it's the Velveteen Dream. Oh God. Now that I've calmed down a little bit and got back in my box, yeah, it was Velveteen Dream this week who impressed a lot on NXT. He wasn't the only one, but he was the North American champion going into the show, defending his title. Not necessarily the North American champion coming out of the show, but he did lose it in entertaining and heartbreaking fashion. It was really, really nice work. Because of his youth and his relative lack of experience, Dream is often the guy being led in these matches, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't play his part well. I mean, he does play his part incredibly well. He is just oozing with charisma, one of the most charismatic men in all of wrestling, and he really does get that across in the middle of his matches as well, not just in promos and backstage vignettes and that sort of thing. He also had the near fall of the week, one of the best near falls of the year, I think, when he took the end of Heartache from Roderick Strong and kicked out at 2, and it took interference from obviously the rest of the Undisputed Era and another finisher to put him away. But that kick out, you know, the crowd all came off their seats for that. They really came alive for that kick out, made you believe that he could retain the title and put the result of the match in doubt. But ultimately, he did lose, and it'll be really interesting to see where Velveteen Dream goes from here now that he's not holding a title. Number 3, oh my God, he's back. He's back again on the list. The King of the Ring 2019, Baron Corbin. Corbin, oh man, he's going to be, when we do the Culty Awards, I guess, at the end of the year, I've already picked, I think, my most improved, unless someone just rapidly shoots ahead of him. But I think my most improved of 2019 is going to be Baron Corbin. Then again, is it him actually improving? Or is it us just accepting him more because the booking's improved around him? This was great. This was like Pete Corbin. This is exactly what you want. No authority figure nonsense, none of that stuff, none of the taking over the show and leading big beatdowns against all the baby faces. No, just being a dick in the ring and cheating to win and just being shady, but also turning in some incredible performances. And that all culminated in this week's match against Chad Gable. As I say, I mean, Corbin, I couldn't believe that he escaped the grapevine ankle lock. He also drilled Chad Gable with an excellent countered sort of end of days, just plucking him out of the air and dropping him down to the canvas. It was an excellent end to an excellent match, and you know what? I wasn't even too mad that Baron Corbin won. I wanted a babyface to win this King of the Ring tournament, or maybe even Andrade, but once all those guys got eliminated, I stopped and I thought, you know what? Corbin has been really good, and it was really good to see that a lot of people online agreed with me as well. They also were watching these matches and thinking, Corbin's doing a really good job, and he has been. I really enjoyed it. I guess the secret was to just ditch the waistcoat and you'll be absolutely fine. If only he'd known that a year or 2 ago. Next up, number 2 this week, and the new Rev Pro British Heavyweight Champion, the previous champion before Tana Hoshi, he's the champion again. It's Zack Sabre Jr. Zack and Tana Hoshi put on a really classic match this week. They've got incredible chemistry, they always wrestle each other, and they always deliver. You could argue that it wasn't quite as good as their match at Royal Quest, but it was still a really, really good match. I thought it was a bit of a disastrous result for Tana Hoshi, actually, which is why he hasn't made it onto the points table this week. Just because he won the belt and then lost it straight away, but the manner in which Zack won made it an excellent week for him. I didn't quite catch this at the time, but then when I read Meltzer's review in The Observer of the match, and he kind of picked up on it, and then I went back and watched Zack's promo after the match, I realised what they were doing here. Well, I didn't realise, I've read what Meltzer said, and then Zack told me in the promo. But what basically happened, if you missed it as well, is that Tana Hoshi clamped on one of, I think, Zack's signature moves, but basically a move that was brought into New Japan by Inoki. It was like the octopus hold, and then Zack was able to reverse that, snag a pinfall, and win his gold back. And then afterwards, you know, he cut a promo or an interview basically saying, I've managed to reverse one of Inoki's moves and pin the ace. The ace is dead. Long live me, essentially. He said he's going to become a triple champion. He has been Zaki 3 belts in the past, but he's going to be a triple champion with the Rev Pro British Heavyweight title, the IC title in New Japan, and the IWGP Heavyweight title. And then he says he's going to bin the IC one because it's useless. Good luck with that, Zack. I'd love to see it, but I don't think it's realistic. It's not realistic because New Japan has so many big heavy hitters higher up the card, like Ibushi, Okada, Naito, the likes of those guys. But it is great to see that Zack is still relevant and still portrayed as one of the biggest threats on the roster, even in the midst of all these megastars. And you know what? I mean, if it wasn't for Ospreay, he'd be the biggest, easily the biggest name in British wrestling of his generation. It just so happens that Ospreay's there as well, so they're kind of sharing that prize at the minute. But you never know. We'll see what happens in the future, because Zack is looking strong at the moment. Not that made it sound like he doesn't look strong before. He's looked strong consistently in New Japan for a number of years. Let's get number 1 done so I can just have a rest. Number 1 this week, and perhaps the reason that I got a bit flustered there, because I knew we were approaching me having to talk about him, it's the heel of this list. The heel of this very video series, the man who waits for a week where there's not been many impressive matches, sneaks in with a good one and bags himself a load of points. And he didn't do that this week. It was a strong week and he fully deserves it. Number 1 this week and my wrestler of the week is Roderick Strong. Dirty, sneaky Roddy was a dirty, sneaky boy this week in that he won the North American Championship from the Velveteen Dream on the first USA episode of NXT with the help of the Undisputed Era. He relied upon the interference of his buddies to win, and it was really good. It was a really good, classic, big, bad heel victory that makes everyone hate them even more. As I mentioned, the whole spot with the end of Heartache and then Velveteen Dream kicking out and then the Undisputed Era getting involved and the next end of Heartache, the closing sequence was top-notch, top-draw stuff, and it made it the best match of the first episode of NXT on TV. And I guess now we have the whole fallout of the Undisputed Era holding all the belts. Adam Cole's prophecy coming true, being fulfilled. He is, of course, the NXT champion. Kyle and Bobby have got the tag belts, and now Roderick is the North American champion as well. And we had that image of them all standing there with the belts. I didn't do that right. Undisputed, yeah. We had the image of them all standing there on the ramp with all the gold, and who's going to topple them? I guess we'll have to wait and see, but it's looking very exciting right now in the NXT landscape. So congratulations to Roderick Strong for being my Wrestler of the Week. And do we have to consider now that there might be a new heel on Wrestlers of the Week? Just because I think this time, and the last time he got a whole load of points as well, Roddy really didn't do anything wrong. He just had really good matches. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Now, let's take a look at that old league table. After an action-packed week last week in the top 10, there are no real big changes in this week's top 10, but as we go down, we can see there's now sort of an underclass of frontrunners beneath kind of the top 10, which sort of begins actually at that 8-point gap between Pac and Zack Sabre Jr., which I'm going to call the North-South divide, after the real North-South divide in England, where I live. A little bit further down, Velveteen Dream has jumped up to 20th position, and you can't see them because they're cut off by the bottom of this league table, but just below Darby Allin in 25th, he is tied with El Phantasmo, and this week's Wrestler of the Week, Roddy Strong. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.